talk about one of those teams that Melvin Gordon has been rumored to go to, and it's the Houston Texans. Steph, I mean, the Texans last year, they had Carlos Hyde in their backfield, who is now a free agent. He rushed for 1,000 yards. They traded for Duke Johnson, who clearly was not quite who they thought he was. They've been rumored to be going after Melvin Gordon for some time now. Do you think it's Melvin Gordon leading the Texans' backfield this season, or do you think it's somebody else?
I would love to see Melvin Gordon there. I know that for sure. Looking at their cap situation, it also looks like they could afford it. They have the sixth most cap space in the NFL at $64 million. Deshaun Watson's still there for relatively cheap. What's interesting, though, I know you mentioned Duke Johnson. I don't want to take anything away from him, actually, because he's only there for $5 million a year, and the Texans really historically over the last, call it 5 years, haven't really done a ton with the running backs receiving chops out of that backfield. So I don't think it was necessarily Duke Johnson had a down year. They just didn't need him that much. You look at his yards per reception, yards per carry. He was actually fine. Wasn't anything crazy, but for $5 million a year, you'll take that. We mentioned Lamar Miller. He's gone off the injury. I don't see them re-signing him. And what's really intriguing about the Texans is they have 6 picks in this draft coming up in April, and no first-round picks. So they have a second, they have a third, they have 2 fourth rounds, a fifth, and a seventh. We were just talking about, hey, you don't need to spend a ton on a running back. You can even sign an undrafted free agent and do extremely well, as we just saw. So maybe if the Texans don't want to shell up for Gordon, we've seen how some of the things have played out with Todd Gurley, for example. Rams give him a huge contract, injury concerns pop up, and now they're stuck in a really tough cap situation. Yeah. So if they look at that and say, look, that's the blueprint we want to stay away from. We don't want to sign Melvin Gordon to a big deal, especially if that's all he wants. Like if he's a boom bust, I want a huge contract or I'm holding out. I don't know. Maybe the Texans have a hard time shelling up everything that Gordon wants. So if they can't find the right price tag for Gordon, hopefully he's learned his lesson from the holdout and not getting a deal. They could take a guy in a second or third round.
Yeah, I think you're spot on. You mentioned Todd Gurley there as kind of that blueprint they want to stay away from. But think of some of the other guys we've talked about on today's show that we said, hey, maybe they could get cut. Devontae Freeman, another guy, they gave him a huge contract, has injury concerns, and he's not living up to that deal. David Johnson, this massive contract, and now we're talking about cutting him 2 years later. Le'Veon Bell, we saw him get huge money, and he was incredibly inefficient for the Jets this past season. Zeke had an awesome season off of that 6-year, $90 million contract, but he's only in year 1 of it. We'll see how that holds up in about year 3 or 4. So it's definitely a blueprint that has not been working for teams. So it does seem like Melvin Gordon could be a bit of a trap in that sense. But at the same time, you got to think about this Texans organization as a team that has been competitive for years. They continue to compete in that division, and it feels like they make it to the wild card or divisional round of the playoffs every single season. And you just know they're not going to make it to the AFC Championship. They're just not that kind of team. So you almost wonder if from like the coaching staff, they don't really have a GM. I think they actually named Bill O'Brien their acting GM right now. So you think about him, and he's like, hey, I'm leading this team to the same spot every year, and I continue to lose. There's a lot of pressure on me. I want to do everything I can to take us to the next level and save my job. Why would I not go get every weapon I can to win this season and not even think about after that? So I wouldn't be surprised if they said, like, hey, we got to win now. We've got Watson, Hopkins. Hopefully Will Fuller can stay healthy. The one piece we've been missing for years is a dynamic running game, and maybe that's where Melvin Gordon takes us over the edge. So I get your point of wanting to stay away from that, but I can't help but think there's a chance that they kind of take that bait and go after Melvin Gordon just due to how frustrated they have to be with getting to the same exact point every single season.
It feels like they're the most likely team to go out and sign a big free agent, that's for sure.
For sure.
Another guy I like in that system, though, kind of plays to your point, right? Like, win now mode, and talking about the Browns, like they already have a great running back in Nick Chubb, and they still have Kareem Hunt there. I know he's a restricted free agent for the Browns, but I think he's one that maybe if they can't afford Gordon or decide to look somewhere else, maybe they can make a deal with Cleveland just like they did for Duke Johnson and go grab Kareem Hunt there. Just another interesting one, maybe a hot take. Wanted to throw out.